Next on KQED Newsroom, surviving in East Oakland.
The outside world look at them as gangs and cliques. Most of the time we look at them as family.
As soon as we come out the womb, we label. They already got a guilty sign on our foreheads, you get what I'm saying?
What happens in Baltimore can happen here. People are tired of being tired.
Hello and welcome to KQED Newsroom. I'm Thuy Vu. Earlier this week, I interviewed 3 young people who grew up in East Oakland in some of the Bay Area's poorest neighborhoods. They had all been involved in street life at one time or another. What they told me was quite moving. Later in the show, we're going to talk about crime and crime prevention strategies. But first, I want you to hear from the young people I met. Tell me about your childhood. What was it like? What has it been like growing up in East Oakland?
In one word, deprived. We all know there's breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but I wasn't privileged to that all the time. Not having a father around, I always tried to believe the lie, which was I didn't care that he wasn't around. But really the truth was I was hurt that he knew about me, but still chose not to be around.
My mom was gone. My dad was in the pen. I moved around from family to family for a while. My dad came back home. I moved with him. The penitentiary affected my dad in a lot of ways. So a lot of his anger and demons would come out towards our household. And we watched my stepmom get beat. At times, we got handled in ways that kids shouldn't have got handled.
Where was your biological mom?
In the streets. The streets had her attention more than her kids did at the time.
I mean, starting 13 on up, it was definitely rough. I mean, it was all me. Anything I had on, from the clothes to the shoes to the money I had in my pocket, was all me.
I would wonder how I'm gonna get money. I'm 12 years old, so I'm not old enough for a job. I can't get a work permit, but I need things. I don't eat 3 times a day. I'm hungry. I can go walk down the street and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna run into a liquor store. The first thing I'm gonna see might just be an opportunity. You know, something that shows me something of comfort or relief. You know, those people on the corner, those people those are a group of people that feel like I do, who came from nothing, who create something between each other. It changes your priority level from applying stuff like, oh, is this a bad situation, to survival.
Why do you think that it's so easy to fall into the street life in Oakland, as you put it?
Out here, you're not living for next year. You're not living for when you turn 25. You're living for right now. If you 13, 14 years old, you want something you want it right now. In these streets, you know you gotta go get it.
Is that because you don't know how much longer you'll live?
Exactly. You know, because like growing up now is to the point to where you could get killed by walking down the street and looking at somebody wrong.
What do you say to people, though, who may look at this situation and say, you know what, lots of people come from bad circumstances, but they don't go rob people, they don't shoot at people?
I would say, come live Oakland, California life. Have no parents. Have your parents smoking crack, snorting heroin. And then come tell me that you're just gonna be okay with that and you're gonna rise and get better and not rob somebody. And I mean, it's not gonna be that easy for you.
Do you consider yourself part of a gang or a clique, or were you ever involved with any of that?
The outside world look at them as gangs and cliques. Most of the time we look at them as family. I grew up in a village, well, which you guys would consider, I guess, projects, which is actually what gave me my stability. So I don't know, I wouldn't consider it a gang, but the outside world, the media, they would look at it as a gang.
It's perceived as a gang or a clique, but any massive group with an objective should be considered a gang if that's the case. If that's a gang, you can say, sure, I was in a gang. I was in a gang along with other people who were deprived of fathers, food, direction, stability.
At what age did you enter a clique?
13.
13.
13 years old. Going to parties, banging, walking around with straps, everything. Straps meaning guns. I mean, you know.
At 13 years old, you were walking around with guns.
Yes. Come on, man. It's East Oakland, California. It's happening every day. Man, you ain't got no choice. Kill or be killed.
My brother was killed by 2 Oakland police officers in 2003 while he was in the house asleep. So it was life-changing. Like, he was who I leaned on. Like, it was me and my brother against the world, because it was me and him going through the struggle, that my mom was on drugs, that she just abandoned us, and he was just my rock.
Have you ever lost friends or family to violence?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Me and a lot of friends, a couple family members, but you kind of like just learn to deal with it after so many.
You're trying to get out of the street life halfway.
I mean, well, so to say, I mean, because like I said, man, I love this. I mean, you know, I would never want to step all the way away from it. I mean, this is where my friends, my family, I mean, you know, like I said, I love this. If I see a dead body on the ground right now, I'll look at it, keep going home and go to sleep just fine and sip some water. Wake up the next morning like ain't nothing happened.
That doesn't bother you to see a dead body on the street?
I mean, you know, like, you see a lot of stuff out here, man. The police, when people die, they leave people on the streets for hours, and people coming to watch it, kids coming to watch it, look at it.
Have you ever been shot at?
Definitely.
How many times?
Man, you know, I've been shot a couple times, I mean, you know, and I've been shot at multiple. Can't count.
You just live with fear every day?
Not fear. No fear. I'm not scared of anything. So when the time comes, it's gonna come, and there's gonna be nothing that I can do about it, me or you.
Tiera, what was the turning point for you that made you decide, I need to stop living the street life?
I wanted to make my brother proud. I didn't want to be a victim to these streets. I've lost so many of my classmates to these streets. I lost so many family members to these streets, and it was just time for something new.
I didn't expect to make it to 22. I had my son when I was about 20 years old, and I lost a cousin to violence. He was murdered on the way to my house. And it changed my life. It made me realize that choice matters.
Do you want to get out of the life completely, 100%?
No. I mean, it's love, man. And I mean, you know, that's another thing that coming from not having a home, like, you know, like, it's love. You see people that you love, people that really love you, that show you love, that got your back.
When your brother passed away, what was that like for you?
I held a lot of anger with Oakland police for a long time because of that. It affected me wise of being out here on the streets, because as soon as I see an officer, my body will unconditionally start shaking.
The police, they don't have nothing to do but sit up here and, you know, kind of like push us around. I mean, police shooting a young black man every which way they go because they're trained to shoot to kill.
To me, it's not even about color. It's the fact that you aren't a product of the environment you are trying to stabilize, which means you're unstable. You're not even from East Oakland, but you try and come to East Oakland with the intent to intimidate. It's wrong already.
But all y'all are a gang with badges. Y'all run two to a car. Y'all drive around. Everybody else is just on the streets. You get what I'm saying? It's just like gangbang. It's no different. Y'all got a badge. Y'all shooting and killing people just like us.
As of what happens in Baltimore, it can happen here. People are tired of being tired. You can only be told no so much before you want to go see what yes is like. And martial law and having all kind of armies and police around, it's going to make us, or I say us because I know what I do, it'll make me get even more rambunctious, because now you're giving me a reason to put my hands up, because you're letting me know with my hands up, you're getting afraid.
Somebody's trying to hold us back.
I think that the statement that the people were trying to make is that we can get bigger than you guys.
Right.
We can get stronger than you guys if we stand together.
At the end of the day, I mean, I don't blame the officers. I blame what's behind the officers. Because, I mean, if somebody gave me a gun and told me it was okay for me to shoot, I wasn't going to go to jail for the rest of my life. I think I would probably be out here killing a lot of people that made me mad.
Is there something you would like everyone to know about young people who are in the street life, something that people may not necessarily already know?
They shouldn't be judged, because just because they're standing on that corner doesn't mean that they don't have someone at home that doesn't care for them, or they don't have anyone that they're living for.
You know, we raised up tough. You know, we ducking gunshots. As soon as we hear gunshots, all we know is hit the ground. And we already know what to do. That's bad. A 5-year-old knowing what to do when he hear gunshots, that shouldn't happen. It's not our fault. It's generation after generation after generation after generation. It goes on.
What are your fears about the future?
My fear about the future is just not to let my son become who I was. My only fear.
Make sure that everything that you go through, you realize that you get through. Humble yourself. Take pride within yourself, but don't let your pride kill you.
What do you want for your son?
I want to be a baseball player. I want him just to live life without having to look over his shoulder, thinking that maybe a bullet may hit him because he's walking to a bus stop, or try to recruit him into a gang.
Do you want to take him out of East Oakland?
No.
No.
No. This is home at the end of the day. Like, honestly, as you grow up, you realize it's not where you live, it's how you live, and it's all about choices.
Incredible stories. That was Kenneth Munson, Tiera, McGill, and Ronald Easley. We spoke at Youth Uprising, a nonprofit in East Oakland. Now, for a larger look at some of the issues they raised, here's Scott Shafer.
Joining me now are Captain Ersie Joyner of the Oakland Police Department. He's in charge of a crime reduction program called Ceasefire. Pendarvis Harshaw, a journalist and teacher at Bunche Continuation School in Oakland. Dr. Angela Wolfe, Director of Justice Strategies at the National Council on Crime and Delinquency. And Clinton Thomas. He was released from prison in November after spending more than 2 decades behind bars for his involvement in a gang-related killing. Welcome to all of you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Well, those young people, very powerful, so many insights. I want to ask each of you, starting with you, Clinton, what stood out for you?
The despair and the lack of vision that comes with youth. They seemingly don't see the flip side of the poverty or the deprivation. As the young man said, he felt really deprived growing up. And coming from where he come from, as a young person, I had that same lack of vision, but as I grew older, I was able to look back and see that there were people in my neighborhood as well who were doing positive things, who were going to school, who were not hanging out on the corners, and that really just provides one aspect of the trauma that's going on in East Oakland.
Are you saying that the despair is a result of living there? Is it something that can easily be overcome, or is it just a sort of a human reaction, normal reaction in some ways?
It's a normal reaction, but the despair is a result of the dysfunction that's going on in those particular households. Because there are homes in East Oakland with 2 parents who are hardworking, tax-paying citizens, law-abiding, and whose kids go to school and graduate and head to college and become positive members of society. But in that situation, those particular young people happen to have some tremendous dysfunction taking place in their households. And as a result, that despair seeps in, and you tend to look for ways in which you can feel empowered.
Penn, do those young people remind you of the students you see at Bunche High School?
Very much so, very much so. You talk about the despair, it's almost a sense of post-traumatic stress. But not only the post-traumatic stress, but there's almost a pre-traumatic stress when they start to look at the future. And I was wondering if is it even possible to study that? That's what I took away from that video.
So the kind of a hopelessness.
Yes. Yeah, looking forward and not feeling like there's anything there. There's no there for them.
Yeah, Angie, what are your thoughts about what you heard?
Well, at first I was really happy to see that there was a woman represented on that panel. I think women and girls and their experience in these communities are so often neglected. Yes. And they grow up to become the mothers of children that are going to participate in this cycle. So it's really important that we provide them with resources. The trauma even in the two-parent households where everything's going pretty smoothly, just living in these communities is a substantial amount of trauma every day. Law enforcement are exposed to trauma as well, and if that is a way of life, you can see the heightened level of arousal, just of day-to-day life. It's exhausting.
Ersie, there was a lot of contempt expressed for the police department. Did anything that you heard there surprise you?
No, it wasn't surprising for me, but I had a little different standpoint when I was viewing it, because I was operating it, watching it, wearing two hats. One wearing as a black man who's born and raised and still lives in this community, and one as a law enforcement professional. As a black man, when I was watching it, the despair, the sense of hopelessness really resonated with me, where I felt like there is something we need to do as a community, not just as a race, but as a community, to instill more hope in our youth so that they don't have these feelings. Hearing someone say that they didn't think they were going to live to 25, I just can't wrap my mind around that. When I was 25 years old, I didn't even know really what life was all about, and I had much life ahead of me.
Did you grow up in circumstances similar to what those kids were describing, young people?
I grew up in circumstances in East Oakland where the things they were describing were all around me as well. I was very fortunate to have two parents in my household that worked very hard. But yeah, I was faced with having to make decisions in regards to doing good or doing bad. And I made some bad decisions as a youth, so I understand that. Then my second hat, wearing as a law enforcement person, I saw that I look at law enforcement, there's deposits and withdrawals. And we've made a lot of withdrawals in this community, and it's about making deposits now.
What do you mean by withdrawals?
Withdrawals meaning things that you see in the media, poor interactions by officers, things that we have done as Oakland police officers where we hadn't held people accountable, or things that have happened in regards to tensions with contacts. What I mean by deposits is being able to actually have someone who can relate to individuals. One of the individuals on there that were just interviewed, I actually sat down and had a one-on-one interview with that was aired on a TV station in the Bay Area. And it's about making relationships and having contacts.
Penn, you grew up in East Oakland. You went to Howard University. You graduated recently from UC Berkeley with a journalism degree, I think. What made the difference for you? What did it take? How hard was it to get out of the situation that you grew up in, or the people around you, as these young folks described?
Optimism. Optimism was the key, thinking that it was possible. Looking around and seeing the environment and seeing how it had impacted people around me. Namely, there's a part in that video where the young lady talked about her mother being involved in the streets and the streets having a hold on her. And I saw that it was very evident with my sister. My sister's 5 years older than I am, and she got involved in the streets. And seeing how that impacted my mother, I didn't want to take that route. I wanted to take another route.
Well, what gave you the optimism? Was there a person, a mentor?
My mother.
Your mother did that?
My mother, ever optimistic, ever thinking that anything is possible.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Clinton, what about you? I mean, you joined a drug gang when you were, what, 13 years old?
I joined a drug gang when I was 13. I first began selling drugs when I was 10. The first time I actually sold drugs there in East Oakland, I was 10 years old. And I wanted to fit in. It was some peer pressure involved, but it was based on my choices ultimately, because I knew better and I knew right from wrong. I still chose to align myself with those who were hanging out because it seemed exciting. And around my 13th birthday, my mother was suffering from heart complications, from heart disease. And she had spent approximately a year in the hospital before she passed away. So I was living with my older siblings, and I was, for lack of better words, out of control. I started hanging out on the streets.
Did you have a father in your life?
No, my father was living in Texas, and my mother was in Oakland. And my stepfather and my mother had divorced years ago, approximately when I was around 10. But the fact of the matter is that I literally saw power in being able to make my own decisions. I saw relief from the shame and embarrassment, because I lived in a close-knit community right there in the Brookfield community area, where it's right off 98th Avenue. And it seemed like everybody knew my business. As a young person, everybody knew that I wasn't having 3 meals a day like the young man shared on the video. And everybody knew that my clothes weren't new because of my mother's struggles with alcoholism and drug addiction in my mind.
You said something interesting, that dealing drugs gave you a sense of power. How common is that getting involved in a gang or doing something like that gives somebody something that they don't feel they can get from another part of their life, including respect, I imagine,
Well,
right?
as a young person, the most important thing in the world to me is my reputation and how my peers perceive me. So if I'm perceived as poor, if I'm perceived as having less than others, I tend not to want to be around. So I skipped the entire 7th grade and was passed to the 8th, right there in East Oakland. I literally skipped the entire 7th grade, was given my report card on the last day of school, became fearful because I knew my mother was going to demonstrate on me, and I opened it up and it said, "You have been passed to the 8th." And at that point, I never really went back to school. I dropped out.
Angie, we hear a lot about, there's a lot of focus on young men, but you a moment ago alluded to girls. What are the different pressures that girls face in a place like East Oakland? And how does the criminal justice system treat them differently, do you think?
Well, I think it's a complicated answer, but one of the woman that spoke talked about her parents being incarcerated. And I think having an unsafe household is one of the primary reasons that girls join gangs to begin with. So they're seeking out a different kind of family that will take care of them. They're often exploited within the gang. And then when law enforcement and the criminal justice system gets involved, they're often removed from their homes or their communities in order to protect girls. Then we're putting them in detention centers and places where they're likely to be further abused in order to protect them. And really what the girls are doing is seeking out a place to be safe. And all of the young people that were speaking today spoke about finding ways to fit in, finding ways to succeed, finding ways to get power, and what we're overlooking in this conversation is all of their resiliency.
Yeah, they're survivors in a lot of ways. Yeah,
Scott, if I can add just to the point, what I've seen, I don't have the empirical data to support this, but I have seen a large uptick in young women being involved in violent crimes, street robberies, shootings, driving cars that are involved in felonious acts. And we've seen this in the last few months. There is a lot of work being done out in East Oakland through Youth Uprising, the East Oakland Youth Development Center. They even have a group doing a pageant every year called the Oakland Teen Pageant. And what their motto is, change the lives of young women, change the community.
And you, of course, work with Project Ceasefire. Tell us about that. How does it work? Who's in it? Is it carrots and sticks, or mostly sticks, or what?
A lot of people like to lump ceasefire into the carrot stick model, but ceasefire is basically a data-driven strategy that's nationally recognized in regards to reducing violent crime. Our motto is simply this. We, one, want to reduce shootings and homicides. 2, reduce the, recidivism and incarceration rates. And 3, which is most important, increase our relationships with the community. So we focused on people who are at most risk of being shot or being the shooters. We then go to them and offer them resources, a way out, for lack of a better word, and offer them resources through services to stop doing what they're doing. If they continue in their acts of violence, we use all the methods necessary to hold them accountable.
Penn, the young people you work with at your high school that you teach, would they be inclined, how would they feel about a program like Ceasefire, do you think?
I don't think I can speak generally about everybody in my high school.
Well, what's your impression?
My impression is that a way out is what they want. Some type of resource that provides economic empowerment, security, safety, optimism for their future. You talk about the hope of drug dealing, or even the young women that I'm familiar with in East Oakland. A lot of them get into the sex trafficking trade just as a way to make money, to make ends meet, and get out of whatever situation they're in. I'll say that one thing that's really evident is the lack of resources, that dearth that's in the community. That's what brings about this cyclical act of violence, where you know that your family was a drug dealing family, so you fall in line with that line of work. And this is the same thing that happens in the suburbs. If your father is the owner of, I don't know, name a business, you've probably fallen in that line of work that your father was in.
So one of you, I think it was maybe you, Angie, mentioned resiliency that a lot of these young people and others like them have, which is great. But there's a price to that too, isn't there? And Clinton, I want to ask you about that in a minute. But I mean, you build up an emotional armor.
Sure. Living in fear for a long period of time will do that to you. And I think it also causes, when you have that armor, then other service providers and people in the community react to you a different way. We're doing a large study with girls involved in gangs in the state of California now, and one of the scales that we gave them was on their perceptions of discrimination and the ways girls perceive they're being discriminated against, both on how they're behaving and what they're putting out there and how people are responding to them.
Discriminated against by?
by everyone in their community.
Yeah.
So yeah, and being labeled in schools and.
Yeah, Clinton, real quick, that emotional armor. I imagine you grew up with that as well.
Yes.
How did you come to? What was your epiphany? How did you realize that it was a problem for you?
It was a problem for me in that it allowed me to participate in a homicide, the murder of an innocent person. And I was desensitized from witnessing acts of violence early on in the community and seeing numerous headlines in the community. And also, not to discredit the fact that we celebrate the gangster in this society. You know, I knew about Al Capone more than I knew about law-abiding citizens. And this armor is something that allowed me to just violate the rights of other people.
So how do you break that armor?
Maturity. And it comes with time. Hopefully, if one lives
long
enough,
that long.
if you live long enough, maturity.
Yeah.
And hopefully you will reach that tipping point. It's called the tipping point, to where you see that there's something better for you. And that's the benefit truly of ceasefire, because in my day and age, I was told to do better, but not really shown how to do better.
So we have a couple of minutes left. I want to ask each of you, what gives you, there's so much despair, and we could talk about that for a long time, but what do you see out there, if anything, that gives you hope? Let me start with you, Penn.
The thing that gives me hope is in the classroom, there's always this one student who doesn't want to participate and will do something simple, a brain teaser, something like that. And you'll see that light bulb go off and they'll just raise their hand or maybe comment under their breath. Something just very subtle that shows that there's potential there.
Yeah. Ersie, what about you?
You know, living in Oakland, I can tell you that not one day goes by on or off duty that I don't see someone that is really good people in the city of Oakland. I took this job because I wanted to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves, and I'm motivated by that daily. Growing up in my neighborhood, a bunch of parents used to tell their kids, go to school, make something of yourself so you can get out of this community. My dad told me all the time, go to school, make something of yourself so you can bring something back to this community.
Angie, what gives you hope and optimism?
Well, these kids aren't one-dimensional. They're not just gangsters. They're not just bad kids. Even the kids that are doing pretty heinous things have really wonderful sides to them, and the trick is to see those and to get more of that out of them.
Clinton, last word.
The returning citizens, the former term-to-life prisoners who are committed inside and outside, who are coming back and adding a new insight to the struggle that's going on within the communities today.
And that you think that's
tremendously hopeful.
Can be spread to other folks.
Tremendously hopeful.
Yeah. Very complicated topic. Thanks so much for coming in and helping us understand it. Clinton Thomas, Captain Ersie Joyner from the Oakland Police Department, Dr. Angie Wolf from the National Council on Crime and Delinquency, and Penn Harshaw, journalist and teacher at Bunche Continuation High School. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Appreciate it.
And that is all for tonight's show. For all of KQED's coverage, please go to kqednews.org. Thanks for watching. I'm Scott Shafer, and for Thuy Vu, good night.